Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to show you a moderately advanced topic in Android, and it's creating a list view with a button in each item and have that button also be clickable in addition to the list item. And this is following off knowledge of previously how to implement a list view and on-click method or item click listener for that list view. So I'm going to start with the layout for the list item first. We've already created the base layout file, and we just need to add what we want inside this actual layout. So we're going to start off with an image. Let me find it here. Just add a simple image view into it. Just drag it in there. We're going to set the size to the image view to be 65 dp. That's just a good size. And we can leave this the same. Just get rid of the margin. We don't need that. Next, we want to add an image to the image view now, and how we're going to do that, we're going to use a widget in Android Studio. So open up your component tray if it's not already open, and then click on your image view. Go to source, and it'll open up a little window, and you can view all the images or drawables that are available to you. And we're going to use the app icon launcher. Just search IC_launcher, hit enter. Actually, you might actually have to click OK, and I'll assign that image to the image view. Next, we want to add a text view so we can show some text on this list item. We're going to use the plain text view. It doesn't need to be special, and we just grab it and we drag it onto the layout. I'm going to try to assign it to the top. It didn't work, but we'll fix that in XML. So we go over to text, and we want to rename the ID for both the image view because I forgot to do that previously. I'm going to rename the ID for the text view right now. And we want to rename the IDs to something meaningful, so we're going to call this list item thumbnail. We're going to call this list item text. All right. And we need to update the references to the IDs because they're no longer valid. So we're just going to copy the text here. I'm going to overwrite these, and the red line should disappear. And we want to get rid of this because we don't want a line to the bottom of that, so we can just delete that, and it should make the text view appear at the top of the list item now. Yes. Next, we want to add a button. We're going to just add a regular OK button. I'm going to drag that in. I'm going to assign it to the far right edge of the layout and release it. I don't know if it actually went down. It shows it over here, but I don't see it on here, so it may be a layout error. Give me a check. Oh, there it is. It's just taking a while to render. So first thing we want to do is change the ID to something meaningful. We're going to call it list item BTN. And let's just get rid of the text, or change the text, better yet, and call it OK. Now we're going to go back over here and look at it finally, and everything appears to be okay. Alright, now we want to go over to our main activity that's going to host. The main activity is very simple, and only just going to list the content, and I just have a simple method called generate list content that'll just create some dummy text just display in the list view, and that's all pretty much. So next, what we have to do is implement the list adapter. So we want to come to the bottom here and create a private class, and we're going to call that private class my list adapter. And we're going to extend array adapter, just a simple adapter, and it's very easy to implement. And we're going to set the generic type to string. Add the brackets. Now we want to implement a constructor. By holding down Alt and Insert inside of Android Studio, it'll create a generate list, and we can call constructor, and it'll give us a list of different constructors that we can implement. We want to specifically implement this one that has the arguments for context, int resource for a resource, and a list of objects. And we want to keep the super call here because it's passing in context, which the system internally it uses, and it'll store off so we can reference it later using the method get context, and it stores off our list of objects, so we can call the method get item, and it'll retrieve the data from it and return it right back to us. So all we really want to do right now is store a reference to our layout file because they don't actually have a public method that we can call that'll return our resource for us or our layout file. So int, we want to make it private, int layout, we're going to call it. And inside a constructor, we assign it to equal to resource, which is just the same thing as calling it a layout, but they just chose a different name for it. So now we're going to leave the constructor and we want to implement the getView method. By pressing Alt and Enter again, it'll create a generate window and we can override the getView method. We're going to search getView, and when you see it, just tap on it and hit Enter, and it'll bring it in. So now what we want to do is we want to check to see if convert view is null. Array adapters run off the concept of trying to recycle old views instead of constantly creating new ones because it's very inefficient, and constantly calling layout inflator is very taxing on the system. So it'll return your old view to you, and you're supposed to check to see if it's null. And if it is null, it's when you actually want to create a new one by inflating it. So that's what we're going to do here, is check to see if it's null, convert view, and if it's equal to null, we want to inflate it. So create a layout inflator, equals to layout inflator from context. I'm going to call an internal method of array adapter called getContext, which returns the very same context we passed into the super method call right here. Now convert view is equals to inflator inflate, and we want to pass in a reference to our layout file, so layout, a reference to our parent layout, which is passed in as a parameter to getView, and the last parameter is just the false. Now what we want to do is we want to start using the ViewHolder pattern. A ViewHolder pattern is just simply a data structure that holds a reference to the data inside of this list item. That way, so you don't have to constantly keep calling find view by ID. It's not super inefficient, but it is taxing onto the system, and constantly do that can slow it down. So if you're doing a lot of things and your views are really big, it can be really inefficient. So we just want to store the references off to those items inside of the list item, so we won't have to do that all the time. So I'm going to go outside of getView, actually outside of my list adapter, and create a public class. I'm going to call it ViewHolder, but it can be called anything, whatever you like. And we're going to create a reference for an image view. I'm going to call it thumbnail. A text view, we're just going to call it title. And a button, we're just going to call it button. And that's all you have to do. You can create more depending on how many views you have internally inside of your list item. So right now we only have 3 views inside of our list item. We only need 3 views inside of ViewHolder. So now what we want to do is create a ViewHolder object equals new ViewHolder. And then we're going to assign the thumbnail, title, and button inside of ViewHolder to the views actually inside that list item and calling find view by ID. We're going to only have to do that one time. So ViewHolder.thumbnail equals to casting it to an image view. Now convert view, find view by ID, or dot, and this is why we named them, gave the IDs meaningful names so it's easy to find. ID dot list item thumbnail. I'm going to do the same thing for the button and the title. Convert view, find view by ID, or dot ID dot list item text, ViewHolder dot button equals button. I'm sorry, casting convert view dot find view by ID. Okay, that's pretty much all we have to do. Now, the last thing we need to do with the ViewHolder object is store a reference of it inside of convert view. So that way, when it's not null, we can retrieve the ViewHolder object and we can directly set the data to the ViewHolder items that way. And we do that by setting a tag on convert view. So we call it convert view set tag. Set tag allows you to store any object and at least one of them. But if you use set tag with the key and object, it internally has a hash map that'll store your objects. But right now we only need to call set tag this way. So we pass in the ViewHolder and we're done. Now, if we're not null, we retrieve this ViewHolder. So we want to create an external ViewHolder reference up here. Main ViewHolder is what we're going to call it. Leave it null. And we're going to assign the main ViewHolder a value here by retrieving it from convert view when we're not null. And we want to cast. Always cast when you're retrieving something from an object. Convert view.get tag. Now, this is how we manually set the values of our list items. I'm going to call title. That's the only thing we actually have to set the text on. We call it set text, and then we want to get a text from our list. So what we call is get item, which is a method of array adapter that internally will just grab an item from outside of this objects array this list array that you passed in. So get item, and we want to pass in the position, which is also a parameter for get view. And that's all we have to do. It's a very simple method. It's very efficient. So now down here, we just want to return our actual convert view now, since it's never going to be null. The last thing we want to do is set an on-click listener for our ViewHolder button. And we want to do this inside of convert view equals null because we don't constantly need to set a new adapt. We don't need to set a new on-click listener. We only need to set it once, and it'll just constantly be recycled. Unless you need the data inside of that on-click listener to be different, is the only time you actually set it in the else section over here. But most of the time you can do it up here, and then in your on-click method you can have special logic that'll determine the actual position. So set on-click listener, new on-click listener. And right now we're just going to create a toast to show that it's working. Make text, get context. Button was clicked for list item. Pause. Put a space in there. I'm going to give this a duration. I'm going to make it short. Call show on it. And that's pretty much everything we need to do. Add a semicolon here so we get rid of the red lines. And that should be the end of the adapter. So we come up here and we set the adapter to the list view. Call lv.setAdapter new my list adapter. We want to pass in context, so we pass in ourselves because activities inherit from context. We want to pass a reference to the layout file, r.layout.list item. Now what we want to do is pass in the data source, which is an array list that I defined up here, and I generate the content by calling generate list content, and we pass in data. And that should be everything, and it should be ready to run. So I'm going to launch my emulator by hitting the green play button up here, and I already have the emulator running in the background, so this should be relatively quick. And a window should pop up, ask me what device I want to push it to, and I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to go over to my emulator. Alright, and now you see OK, and it says list item 0 was pressed. I'm going to go down to the bottom, and it says list item 6 was pressed. Now you may run into a problem when you notice the rest of your list item is not clickable and you get no type of selector for when you press on it, like so. The reason for this is list views, when you have one focusable item such as a button or any type of on-click or a switch inside of it, it'll recursively turn all the focusability of everything off. So to fix this is actually very simple. And you want to go to your layout for your list item, and on the parent item, or the parent view, which is relative layout in this case, we're going to call it Android, and we want to block all descendants focusability. So we call focusability or descendant. Oops, just had it there. Oh, come on, descendant focusability, and we want it to set it to block descendants. And we just run the app again, and everything should work just fine. Click here, and you get a selector. When you click here, it'll work for the button again. Now, I'm going to add a toast for the list item just to give you a little proof that it is working correctly. So we're going to set a list item click listener for the list view. So we call LV, that's set on item click listener. I'm going to call it new on item. And we're just going to create a simple toast as we did with a button. Make toast, pass in main activity. This list item was clicked at, I'm going to pass in position. Now we're going to give it a duration, which is short, and we'll call show on it. Now we just want to run the app. Now it should work perfectly fine. So we click on this item. We get a toast saying list item was clicked at 2, and we click the button. Button was clicked for list item 2. List item was clicked at 5. And we'll hit this button. Button was clicked for list item 3. And that's everything. That's the end of this tutorial. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, let me know in the comments, and I can possibly make more for different things you would like to know. Because you can add all kinds of things in list items. You can make it even more efficient, and I can possibly show you how to show images in there next from like the gallery.